What's up, guys? It's Ben from Ambition. In this latest video, I really wanted to share and just kind of go over the first three, I guess, or the top three things I learned after starting the brand and after trying to grow this thing. After here we are 2 years in, and some of these things I'm still trying to adapt and learn and get better at. They kind of just hit me organically and was like, hey, like this is a pretty big thing I need to learn or need to get better at to grow the brand. And then some of them, people have just kind of told me, or I learned from watching content similar to the stuff that I'm putting out here. Found brands or found business people or other entrepreneurs that are in other spaces kind of relay that message to their own audience. There's a lot of people I follow that are inspirations of mine, and I don't know, heroes might be a good word, but people that have grown businesses that I admire. Every industry is different. There's different niches, and each business is going to kind of vary based on whatever vertical you may be in. However, in my belief and what I've learned so far from trying to grow this brand is that there's kind of three main pillars that you can work on and hone those skills to kind of help you set the base and have a baseline to work on and help propel yourself as an individual and help grow the business. One of them, in my opinion, and what I've come to learn, is patience. Patience is huge, and it'll get you very far in life. You need to be able to take a step back, understand nothing happens overnight, and be willing to put in the work and continuously stack the deck in your favor, and then eventually the tide is going to turn. Number two is always be willing to ask questions. It's sometimes can be nerve-wracking, and you never want to be in a position and everyone's kind of always nervous to embarrass themselves, right? Because they might not know something, and everyone always wants to come off as an expert in something, but that's just simply not the case. You're not going to be an expert in everything. Nobody is an expert in everything. Nobody's perfect. Everyone comes from starts at the beginning and learns as they go. You might be an expert in one thing, but not the next, and the guy next to you might be an expert in that one thing you're trying to learn, but have no idea how to master or know anything about what you're really knowledgeable at. So always never be afraid to go out there and poke people's brains and get the answers you're looking for, because that'll only help propel you in your own personal life and develop as an individual, but also help grow your business, and you can learn more and more about your business from people that are in it or someone else and other entrepreneurs. Never be afraid to pick people's brains and grow as an individual. And number three is kind of in the same vein as number two, but always be willing to learn. Being coachable is, in my opinion, the best skill you can have and the best mindset you can have. Never be too proud or have too big of an ego to ask questions, like I said before, and just be willing to learn and better yourself. No one is perfect. Everyone starts from somewhere, and if you have the mindset of being kind of moldable and coachable and just that eagerness and willingness to learn, you'll be set for life, because you're always trying to just better yourself and keep an open mind to things. So I'll try to go into a little more detail on each of these three. The first one I mentioned was patience. That is probably this is number one on my list, because it's probably the thing that I'm still the worst at, and I'm trying to get better day in and day out. My girlfriend always busts my chops that I never stop and smell the roses of something. If something good happens, and let's say I get a couple orders in one day for Ambition, and I get someone or a couple people order some t-shirts or some hoodies, I'm excited for about 30 seconds, a minute, maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour, and then I'm like, all right, need to keep doing this, need to sell more. Or if a video I post does really well and gets a couple thousand views, or I posted one recently that got 20,000 views, I'm like, all right, nice. And then I posted another one and didn't do nearly as well. So I need to realize, and everyone needs to kind of have this mindset that nothing happens overnight, and you always need to continue to put in the work. And it's a slow, methodical pace that you need to have. It's a cliche saying, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. You're not going to obtain anything in a short amount of time. I've been running this clothing brand for 2 years now, a little less than 2 years, right around 2 years. And one of the main things I've learned while trying to build this brand is that things take time. You have to put in the work each day, every day, continuously think of different ideas, ways to optimize how you're doing things on a daily basis, trying to figure out how to connect with an audience. First of all, identify that audience, then figure out how to connect with them, put out content that engages with them. I'm still trying to learn how to do that now, and I'm trying to do that with you guys here on this channel. And then also, at the root of it all, make sure that the product that you're putting out there is quality and stuff that you think will resonate with people, stuff that you like, and try to connect with that audience that you're trying to build. And all of this stuff takes a lot of time. So don't get discouraged when you're a couple months in, or a couple weeks in, or even a year or so in. Like I said, I'm only 2 years into this thing. It takes a long time to build a brand and check off that checklist that I just listed. And there's much more on that list than the few things I've mentioned. So it all comes back to just being patient, knowing that you're on the right path, and understanding that sometimes you're going to fail, and that things that you put out there just might not resonate with people. Some of those things just, you might fail, you might whiff, you might strike out, and it's okay. Just go back to the drawing board, and you need to be able to analyze it and be like, all right, where did I go wrong? How do I correct this? How can I do better next time? And all that stuff just comes down to having the mindset of like, all right, I know I love what I'm doing. I know I'm on the right path here. I just need to figure it out. Let time run its course, and day in and day out, you're going to slowly build momentum. And then one day you're going to wake up and you're going to look back at everything you've done and say, nice. Like, yes, it might have taken a long time, but I can, if you break down your routine over that long stretch of time, you can see, all right, yes, I can see the work that I put in was worth it, because I worked hard, put my nose down, and I messed up a few times. But in the long run, it all worked out because you put in the work, and you just need to be patient and understand that, and just continuously, day in and day out, building blocks. Just keep stacking them up, and you're going to stack the deck in your favor, and eventually things are going to work out for you. But you need to be able to identify when things don't, and pivot and adapt. Well, like I said, I've been doing this for around 2 years now, and out of the gates, it was a very slow burn. It still is a slow burn, and I'm still growing and learning every day, and trying to obviously continue to make sales and build an audience and get followers and engage with people. I send a lot of DMs every day. There goes the train. If you don't think I'm actually based in New York City, there you go. Train's going by my window right now. Yeah, so it's a very slow burn, and in the beginning, things aren't always going to necessarily go your way. I've been at this for 2 years, said that a million times, and at the beginning, I didn't sell anything. Like there was a couple months stretch there where, outside of just a couple of my buddies and some family, no one really bought anything. And sure, it's discouraging, but and that's how you have to, like I've said before, be able to pivot and adapt and like, all right, what am I doing wrong? How can I do this better? And just try to go down that route. And then if things still aren't working, take a bigger step back and be like, all right, what else can I change? How can I connect with people better? And then, like I said, there was a stretch there where I wasn't really selling anything. And obviously this is still not a massive brand. It was started out as a side hustle, and it still is. I have my current 9-to-5 job that pays the bills, but this is slowly, I can feel the momentum shifting, and things are starting to progress into my favor, and things are happening, but we're still a long way from the end product and where I want to be. And you have to understand that and be willing to accept that every day you have to just continuously think about how to optimize what you're doing. In the beginning, not many sales. Then I started to pick up some momentum, and I would get a couple sales here and there. And then I started getting a couple sales a month. And that is such a rewarding feeling, because if you look back, now that I'm getting, several sales a month, I look back and be like, oh man, I remember when I just had absolutely nothing, and I was just like sinking money into this and just losing it all. But here we are, and it's starting to like I said, far away from the finish line. But I know that the patience that I had and the work that I put in behind the scenes are starting to turn into my favor, which is the best feeling in the world. So it's a slow course. Put your head down, work, and be patient. Now that leads me into bullet point number 2, which is don't be afraid to ask questions. I mentioned before that I think the biggest reason that people kind of fail at this and don't ask questions and don't learn is simply because they don't want to look stupid, or they don't want to be embarrassed because they don't know something and they're afraid to raise their hands and go to someone that's an expert, or go to someone that might be more knowledgeable than them in a particular field and ask them questions. And to me, I've never quite understood that, because I can completely understand the fact of, not wanting to look stupid and be embarrassed. Nobody wants to look stupid. Nobody wants to get embarrassed. But you have to understand, when you boil it down, when you're talking to some other person out there, regardless if it's a celebrity, like a famous entrepreneur, anybody, they're just humans. It's just another dude you're talking to, or another girl you're talking to, who was at one point in very similar shoes to you, and they were an amateur at something. They were at one point, let's say there's a big rich celebrity that you're afraid to talk to. At one point, they didn't have any money. At one point, they were not a rich celebrity. At one point, they were not a very successful businessman. Everyone started from the bottom floor and worked their way up. And obviously, yes, there's some cases where people were born into things. Let's exclude them from this conversation. I'm talking more so about a very successful entrepreneur or a business person, or just any successful person in business, whether it's a real estate agent, someone that started their own business, a successful chef, a successful director, a successful actor, whoever. At some point, they had to, make it on their own and figure things out for themselves. So at one point, you can boil it down, they were exactly where you are right now. And do you think that they were too timid to ask questions of how to succeed and how to improve themselves and how to get better? No, they had the courage to put themselves out there, be a little vulnerable, and figure out ways to be successful. And the ways to do that is to look at the people that are out there right now doing successful things and attach themselves to that person, and ask them questions and be like, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? And obviously, sometimes not every successful person out there is going to be a quality individual and share the secret sauce or give you the time of day. But if you have someone in your life, whether it's a colleague, a mentor, or just someone that through the 6 degrees of separation that's doing something awesome, or that you think is really cool and they're successful at it, shoot them a DM. Reach out to them. Give them a phone call. Text them. Ask them if you could bend their ear for 2 minutes about something. There's no reason they should feel ashamed or embarrassed just because you are a novice at something or an amateur and you want to hone that skill or you want to get better at that. There's no shame in that. If anything, that's a redeeming quality to have, because it shows the world, and if that person is a good individual, it'll show them that you have. You're hungry and you are willing and able to put in the work and understand that things take time, but you want to learn from them. And if anything, that'll kind of hype up that person, because it'll give them a little ego boost, like, oh, someone's coming to me to ask me about how to do something. This must mean I'm on the right track. I'm doing something right, because it'll probably remind them that at one point in their life they were they were in the shoes that you're in, and they were like, oh man, I'm trying to figure something out too, but now. Here I am. Someone's coming to me. I'm doing something right here. So that I can't imagine anyone that would, not reply to that DM or not give you the time of day. And if they are, forget them. On to the next. They're not worth your time anyway if they're gonna, just not give you the time of day. So if there's one thing you take away from this video, just remember that nobody's perfect. Nobody's an expert at everything. Everybody started at the ground floor at some point in their career. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable and put yourself out there and ask questions to get to the bottom of what you're trying to pursue and just overall grow yourself as an individual. So the third piece of advice that I want to give here, it really goes hand in hand with number 2, is you have to be coachable and be willing to learn. It's great that you can ask questions if you had the courage and you put yourself out there enough and you understood the everything we just went over, but now you have to be able to put it into effect, right? So great, you asked questions, you pinpointed people that you found were successful and maybe experts in a field that you were trying to learn about, but you also have to have an open mind and not have an ego and be willing to listen to the people that you ask questions to. You have to be willing to put the pieces of advice that they've given you into effect. Being coachable, in my opinion, is the number one characteristic of just a well-rounded person. You have to check your ego at the door, and if you truly want to be a better person, a smarter person, just an all-around expert in one particular field, you have to keep an open mind and be willing to listen to what other people are telling you. If you are getting all this advice, you could be getting the advice from the smartest person in the world, the number one expert in one particular niche. Let me put it this way, because I'm a baseball fan. If you wanted to be a Gold Glove shortstop and learn how to hit 300 and hit an inside pitch to right field, you had Derek Jeter, one of the all-time great shortstops, one of the best opposite field hitting shortstops to ever play baseball, and you had access to him, and he was willing to give you advice and throw you batting practice, hit you ground balls, and teach you everything he learned from his 20-year career as a Yankee, and you had him for, you had all this access to him, and he was teaching, he was giving you advice, he was telling you everything he learned, and sure, you asked some questions, and and you're able to master that skill of not being afraid to raise your hand, ask point blank questions, and really pick somebody's brain, but at the same time you had too much of an ego, and you thought what he was telling you was either incorrect, which is crazy because he's the expert, you're the amateur, or if you're just too proud to be willing to say, oh, you know what, I'm wrong on this, he's correct, or maybe you were content with all the work you had been putting in behind the scenes on your own, and when he was there to give you advice, you heard it, but you didn't listen. That's stupidity, in my opinion, and that's the definition of not being coachable. If you are asking all these questions, but when you hear the answers, maybe you don't like them because it requires you to put in more work or change your line of thinking or change the processes and the systems that you had in place to something that might be a little foreign to you and something you have to learn. That's the recipe for just disaster and how to not to succeed in anything you do. Number 2 and number 3 in the advice that I'm giving here are really go hand in hand, because you have to be willing to ask the questions, and then be willing to act on them, and keep an open mind, and be moldable, be coachable, and be willing to admit that you might be wrong and look at things from a different perspective. Yeah, so those are the 3 biggest things that I've learned so far across, trying to grow this brand and just in my career, in my 9-to-5 job, as well as, applying it here and trying to grow ambition. Be patient, be willing to ask questions, and be coachable, and be willing to learn. If this was at all helpful to you, or if made you potentially change your perspective on how you approach certain things, whether in your personal life or in a business you're trying to grow, and if this gave you just the slightest bit of relief, or if you liked what you heard at all, please throw me a like, subscribe on the channel. I'm going to try to put out more content like this, and just be kind of an open book with things that I've learned along the way and things that I'm going to continue to learn with trying to grow this brand. So appreciate it, guys. Thank you. See you next time.